And we're live, bros.
Going on.
How
What
goes it?
up?
I just want to make sure everything's running smoothly. Seems to be good. Chat, let me know. Audio, video, all that quality stuff. This is episode 2 since the relaunch of hashtag Not Another Bitcoin podcast. As always, I'm with my co-host Miggy. How goes it, bro?
What's up, bro? How are you?
Well, I'm excited to have an OG in the guest seat, Adam Barlam of decentralweb.org. How goes it?
What's up, bro? It's going pretty well.
Yeah,
How are
man,
you guys doing?
it is now, man. I'm just happy to see you, happy to be talking to you, and happy to be doing this again.
Nice. It's been a
Yeah,
while. I don't think
yeah,
I haven't been on here. I was on the original Not Another Bitcoin podcast. So this is the relaunch.
yeah, yeah.
This is like
Relaunch.
post halving. This is post halving Not Another Bitcoin podcast.
I know if I had better timing, I would have waited for the halving since it's falling on 420.
It's gonna be either 419 or 420. We're gonna see. It's getting close.
Yeah, we just got to make sure we congest the network enough. Like, just force it to
You need to
happen.
throw on some miners over there. You need to.
Yeah, man. I guess give the audience a little breakdown of yourself. I'm sure you're tired of this, but let them know, I guess, about yourself, how you got into crypto, and a little bit about your journey in the space that has led you to decentralweb.org.
Sure. So, my name is Adam Barlam. I've known about Bitcoin since 2011. Unfortunately, I didn't get in 2011. I tried to get the company that I worked for into Bitcoin in 2011. I worked for a financial newsletter publisher at the time, and they were making like options newsletters and penny stock newsletters and stuff like that. I did IT and like programming and automation for them and the website and everything. And we had a penny stock division. And I was like looking into Bitcoin, and Bitcoin went from like $6 to $36 in like really short order. And I brought it up at multiple meetings, and I was like, "Hey guys, we should take a look at this like Bitcoin thing. It has like crazy volatility. I think it would be cool for like the penny stock newsletter readers to check this out. Like penny stocks, it's like the same type of like crazy volatility." And I brought it up in 3 subsequent meetings as it went up from like $6 to $36, and they
Oh,
laughed me out of the meeting every single time. And they said, "We're not covering your stupid World of Warcraft internet money."
their
So yeah,
loss.
they're lost. I mean, they'd probably
Right.
all be retired now if they did cover my World of Warcraft internet money, because they all probably would have bought Bitcoin at like $6, and they probably could have had like a hundred number, a couple hundred of them for relatively cheap.
Oh,
But
dude,
yeah,
I'm sure they
so
bring you up at every Thanksgiving or Christmas or something. Remember that
they're
guy?
like, "Remember that Adam dude who was in our IT department who said we should check this out?" Well, yeah, it's gone up a magnitude since. So that was like the first time I remember I really started like looking into Bitcoin and checking it out. But I didn't really do anything with it until 2013. So I worked at GoDaddy for a number of years. I did senior architecture design at GoDaddy, and there was a guy at the data center there, and he was like, I was always in the data center setting up storage rigs and stuff because I was doing architectural design of like crazy NASs and SANs and for all of GoDaddy. So these were like multi-million-dollar storage systems I was setting up. And there was a guy there at the data center, and he was like, "Hey man, have you ever like looked into Bitcoin at all?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have a little bit." And Bitcoin was like, I think it was like $25 or $30. It had crashed again, and it was kind of low again. And he was like, "Yeah, I've been buying some," and then it went up like 10x. And I remember it was like $200, and I was like, "You should probably sell it." And he's like, "No, I'm holding on to it, man." And then I ended up buying some in 2013 at $200. But this was before like the whole narrative of like store value. It was like super fucking volatile and risky back then. So it went from 200 to 600 like super quick. I bought 3 of them at the time, and so I turned like $200 into
That's
$600 per
cool.
coin. I was like, sweet profit, I'm out, and I sold it. And then like
Cha-ching.
I really didn't do anything with it until like 2016. So in 2016 is like when I really started getting involved with like blockchain, and like development of blockchain. So 2016, funny story actually. So like 2016, I started picking up Bitcoin again because I was buying IPTV services, and IPTV services you could only pay them in Bitcoin. I don't know if you're like familiar with like IPTV.
Yeah, but they only
That's
accepted
cool.
Bitcoin? I didn't know that.
Yeah, because like, well, it's because like PayPal and all they couldn't have a traditional merchant accounts. Like they had to accept Bitcoin because it was like, I mean, it's a little bit
Hmm.
like gray and like shady what they were doing. So I remember I was like buying IPTV. So I was going on to Coinbase in like 2016 and like buying buying Bitcoin and sending it to them. And actually, I look at it now, and I was literally like buying like zero point 0.1 Bitcoin at a time, which was like $20 or so or whatever it
Yeah.
was. And I was like, I was literally paying these dudes like or the equivalent of 7K a month right now for IPTV services if I had just held. So moral of the story is always hold your Bitcoin. Just like don't really spend it. Diamond hands that
Yeah.
shit. So anyway, so 2016, I really started getting into it more. I started doing development. I forked the Steam blockchain at that point in time, and I created like some like social networks that were like blockchain based. And I was just like messing around with that stuff for a couple of years. But in like 2018, on the way to actually no, it was 2017. I was on the way to World Crypto Con in Las Vegas, which I know you were there.
I love that.
I don't know if you were there, Miggy. That was a great conference. I wish they would bring that back. That was like a super fun conference.
That's the year they threw me a birthday party. They had a cake with my face on it and everything. It was great.
Oh wow.
I love those
That's
guys
cool.
out there in Vegas. They're crazy.
Yeah. No, that was a great conference, and they had like a ton of people showed up for it. So that was like it
Yeah.
was super cool. So I remember we were on our way to or to World Crypto Con, and my business partner was in the car with me, and like I'd worked at GoDaddy all these years, so I like had like a really good understanding of like domains and DNS and like how centralized it was, and I was like, wouldn't it be cool if you can just like create your own domain name and DNS and just have it on like the blockchain on like Ethereum blockchain? She's like, that would be super cool. And I was like, yeah, you can have like your own like domains, like your own top level domains. And that's kind of like where like the idea was spawned, but I didn't really like I had it in the back of my head and like, had the idea of like how to like architect and structure it, but I didn't really start like messing around with it or really setting it up to like 2020.
Oh.
So in 2020, like I had this idea with my buddy Michael, who I've known since we were like 13. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And I told him, I said, I want to make it so that anyone can register a domain name. So like, let me just give you a little bit of background about how like how top level domains work. They call them TLDs. So like, if you have like right now we have all these different TLDs on the Web2 network. So we have like .com, .net, .org. Those were like the first three, right? And then like they started branching out and they had like .info and .blog and .photography and like all these others, right? And then companies tried to start coming out with like their own top level domains, and like a lot of them got denied, except unless you were like Amazon or someone like that.
Right.
And basically, the way that you get a top level domain that's approved is you have to submit an application to ICANN, which is like they're like a governing body of like domain names, and basically you have to submit a non-refundable application to them, and it's like $250,000 for this application. Like, and it's not refundable. So, and most people get denied. They have like a 99.5% denial rate. And then after that, you have to pay like $15,000 a month or something around that for them to maintain the top level domain for you. So it's like super centralized. It's like if you're like a little mom and pop or like a hobbyist or like an indie developer, you don't have that type of money to like spend to get your own top level domain.
Yeah.
And like being at GoDaddy, I like saw this. I was like, man, domains are just so centralized, and like DNS is such like an archaic system that needs to be updated. So that's where like the idea of like Decentraland was like born. We were like, it'd be cool if you can have like .atom or .brobro or .bozak or .miggy, and then have these DNS records on Ethereum. So like, one of the issues that we have with DNS today is that it's so centralized, and as a result of that, you have multiple issues that occur like security wise and vulnerability wise. A year ago, or maybe it was 2 years ago now, there was a big issue where a bunch of Web3 dexes, QuickSwap, the dex on Polygon, was a victim of this, and then Spooky Swap, which was a dex on Phantom chain, was a victim of this. But basically, what people are doing, or what hackers are doing, is that they employ social engineering tactics to try to hack into systems, right? Like that's like the most common way that hackers break into systems. They social engineer, whether that's like calling up like the company's IT department and pretending to be like an employee to try to get like credentials or more information, or whatever information they can get to kind of like further the path to exploit the system. So what happened is that GoDaddy is like one of the major domain registrars in the world. They have like, I think they have like 100 million domains under management, and they control probably about like, I think like 60% plus or 65% plus of all domains.
Ooh,
so they're like
a honeypot.
Yeah, they're like a honeypot, right? So people call GoDaddy all the time, and this used to happen even when I was working there. Like we used to, get reports from support people that would be like, yeah, they try to hack us all the time. So people would call up GoDaddy support, and they'd like, give them like a sob story, like, hey, I'm trying to get in my domain. I don't know what the password is. And then like, they tried like 5 or 6 or 7 support agents until like one of the support agents is like, okay, I'll let you into your domain. So what they did was that, they called up, said they owned QuickSwap, they owned Spooky Swap, and then they got access to the domain. And then what they did was they changed the name servers. So basically they redirected the domain. And the reason why they can do this is because it's all centralized. There's a single point of failure. They redirected the domains to a clone of QuickSwap and a clone of SpookSwap that looked identical. Like you couldn't tell, like it was literally a clone of the site. And then what they did is that they swapped out the smart contract with a malicious smart contract. So people would come to the new QuickSwap site. Your SSL certificate looked correct. Like the green lock is up there. People are like, oh, I'm at QuickSwap. But then when you try to connect your wallet, it would ask you for a reapproval. And most people didn't realize what that meant. So they approved the new contract. They thought they were on the regular QuickSwap or Spooky Swap site. And then as soon as they connected and signed the transaction, it drained their wallet.
Holy
and they
shit.
did this for a number of projects. And it shows you the flaws that exist in having a centralized DNS structure. So something that you could do with DecentraWeb is that if you were to move these DNS records on chain, right, your DNS records are now secured by your private key of your wallet, right? So it's a domain name is associated with a wallet, which is associated with a private key, and you don't know the IP address or the computer that's hosting that wallet. So, in order to do an attack like this, it's nearly impossible because you'd have to do such a specific targeted attack and know what wallet holds it. And you'd be able to know what a wallet holds it, but you need to figure out the IP address of the person that holds that wallet and then try to get the private key of that and then go and, write a change on chain to change your DNS record. And that was kind of the impetus behind some of the things that are exploitable on traditional DNS and why DNS needs to move to more of a secured on-chain fashion. And that's just one example. Another example is censorship. There's been plenty of instances of censorship where DNS providers or GoDaddy, the registrars or companies censor websites. Like Amazon, for instance, they've censored websites before on AWS because they've been competing with their core business, and that's common. That happens with a lot of different DNS providers and domain providers. Or you have, government censorship that occurs. And, having DNS available on a chain like Ethereum, which is very, very decentralized and secure, you can essentially circumvent all this type of censorship, all these types of vulnerabilities by moving DNS on chain. So, that was the whole. Go ahead.
I'm just curious. It made me think. Is there a way that these DNS vulnerabilities could affect blockchains at their core, like Bitcoin, if they don't use something more decentralized?
So I guess it depends if you were to use a Bitcoin node that's not your own node. So you always want to make sure that there's different levels of security, and you kind of have to decide what level of security is appropriate for you. There's most users, they think that okay, I'm okay with connecting into a third-party Bitcoin node, right? Or I'm okay connecting into Infura or Alchemy or some sort of Ethereum RPC provider to get my own blockchain data. But that doesn't mean that those providers can't censor transactions or censor your access to it. And really, the most secure way is to run your own nodes and then connect to them locally. And and we've always been an advocate for that. But obviously there's technological hurdles to do something like that, and the average user may not be.
Who uses their own node? We just use the wallets nodes. You know what I mean? They did all the work for us. Thanks them.
Sure, and that can be an issue, and that that
right,
even
that's
goes
what I'm
into
getting at, because you just talking about this made me worry right there about that.
So yeah,
why don't wallets have a DecentraWeb?
Sure, and
Right.
that's one of the things that we're talking about. So there's there's multiple areas of decentralization that need to be into play. DNS is definitely a critical one. But yeah, relying on a third-party node is definitely a security vulnerability on your part, and it's all about trust. Do you trust this node? Do you trust the data that it's giving you? Do you trust that it's going to broadcast all your transactions that you're sending to it? Do you trust that it's not going to censor anything? I mean, there was a huge issue with Ethereum when it went over to proof of stake, where nodes were complying with OFAC sanctions. And they were sanctioning certain blocks and certain transactions from going in certain blocks if the wallet addresses in those transactions that were being broadcast were on the OFAC sanctions list. So, there's a lot that goes into this and things to think about. And, do you want to have true decentralization, or do you want to play decentralization theater? And, if you want to start taking things into your own hands.
I actually like that decentralization theater. I have a question from the chat here from Rick. He wants to know, so he says, DNS records on chain, what does that mean? How does SOA point to the blockchain?
Sure. So currently, let's talk about Web2 DNS, the way Web2 DNS works. So there's what we call the root servers. I believe there's 27 of them. Root servers contain all DNS records and then propagate these records to all the other DNS servers throughout the world, right? So it's a giant propagation layer. And then you have your DNS servers that you query generally come from your ISP by default. Like if you're running like a cable modem or something like that, okay, and you're running DHCP, generally they'll push down the ISP's DNS servers. Some people switch and like, for instance, I don't use my ISP's DNS servers. I generally use Google's DNS servers or OpenDNS. So people can go in and change the DNS servers that they're currently using and querying to get whatever DNS results they want to. And that's basically how Web2 works. So, this is all running on like port 53 UDP. All your DNS requests send out to the DNS server. You're like, hey, I'm going to visit youtube.com. DNS server, what's the IP address for that? And then it replies back to the IP address. Your browser, operating system, whatever you're doing within your operating system knows where to go from there, and then it functions. Web3 DNS is we're taking these same exact types of records and we're actually putting them onto the Ethereum blockchain or onto the Polygon blockchain. So essentially, you can have like .bro, for instance, and say, like, for instance, I know you own Kenn Bosak .bro. You can have DNS records that are traditionally on Web 2, now on Web 3. So whether that's like an A name or a C name or an MX record for a mail server, or even a new record type that now we've introduced called a wallet resolution record. So now you can have Kenn Bosak .bro resolved to your 0x address on Ethereum or your Bitcoin address or any of these types of addresses. And what we've done is we've actually, to make this fully compatible and backwards compatible, we've actually taken Google's open source DNS server, it's a Go server, and we've modified it. And essentially what we've done is we've given the ability, we've created a module essentially, which allows for when requests come into this DNS server, and we're working on even decentralizing this further so that the community can start running these DNS servers. But essentially, when a request comes into the DNS server, it knows whether it's a Web 2 request or a Web 3 request. If it's a Web 3 request, it does an on-chain lookup of of the record types to see, so if a Web3 request comes in and say it's a web request, right? Like it's trying to go to https://kenbosak.bro, right? Like for instance, say that request comes in. Well, the DNS server knows like, hey, okay, .bro isn't a regular top level domain that's with ICANN, right? So we know instantly that's a Web3 domain. So we're gonna have to do a Web3 lookup on chain to figure out the IP address that's associated with, or the wallet address that's associated with if it's like a token transaction or a coin transaction.
Okay.
What made you pick Ethereum as opposed to like doing what the ordinals are doing with Bitcoin?
So Bitcoin isn't a full Turing complete blockchain. So you're not able to do the type of programmatic types of functionality and structure that we would need that occurs on Ethereum. And then furthermore, the Bitcoin blockchain is once every 10-minute blocks, so that doesn't work either. We need to have something that updates a little bit quicker. So say, for instance, you're under a DDoS attack, right? Your website is or something like that, and you need to make an IP address change or something like that. You're not going to be able to wait 10 minutes to make this IP address change. You're going to want to try to push that update, instantly so that it goes out on the Ethereum blockchain or something like that. And then, you may have to make multiple updates to the chain, if you're getting attacked or something like that's going on, or, just making changes in general. So Bitcoin wasn't really feasible for that.
Okay, that's what's up. So I guess explain a little bit about the user experience. I guess not so much for the wallets and stuff like that, but for me and maybe us the end users, how does this is something like that we would utilize?
Sure. So domains are a very interesting industry, right? It's almost like scarcity kind of applies to domains as well, and that's why
collectability. That's for sure.
And collectability, and that's why domain names have value. Web2 domains have value. Keyworded domains have value. They're good for SEO search terms, right? So if you have a keyword, say you have bitcoin.org or something like that.
Well, somebody snagged KennBosak.com, so that's not mine anymore.
No. Exactly. And if someone was to set up a website on KennBosak.com, naturally Google would favor that website for search rankings because it has the keyword in its domain. And this actually used to be even more critical, back in the day, but then Google made some updates. But basically, previously, I used to do a lot of SEO. So from an SEO standpoint, if you had a keyworded domain, it was very easy to crawl to the top of Google for those specific keywords. So that was like a huge thing that we used to do at being a quote unquote domainer, is that you look for search terms that were highly searched, and then get the .com or the .org or the .net, and then set up a website on that, and optimize for those keywords. But as a regular user, Web3 domains and DNS is kind of like, it's adopting Web2 functionality, but then it's taking it a step further. And Web3 is not just a domain for like a website or your email or something like that. It's becoming like your identity, right? So if you can have a domain name that's tied to your private key, that's tied to your wallet, it almost becomes like your Web3 ID, right? And then you can use that to sign into applications or authenticate yourself.
Oh,
and because we know that you're holding it, in your own wallet with it, verified by your own private key, we know it's you. We know, there's not a custodian that's holding on to it like a GoDaddy or something like that. So, we've had we have about 500,000 registrations right now on Decentraland network between top level domains and, regular domains, sub-level domains. So, you could go to decentralweb.org and search for a specific, domain name, right? I don't know if you want to pull that up. You can share your screen and check it out. But essentially, say you wanted to get .Kenn, right? Or something like that, or even emojis. Emojis are supported as well. You can have that as your wallet address or that as your chat handle identifier. And use it, or even use it as an email address or a website. There's tons of different functionality. It's, we're just extending Web2 functionality into Web3 domains and allowing anyone, and their mother to be able to permissionlessly register a top level domain, which previously was very cost prohibitive, with ICANN, and it was under their control and at their discretion whether or not they were going to approve something like that. So, the internet is an open system. We feel DNS should be an open system. Domain names should be an open system. And we shouldn't have this governing body and the big boys saying, oh, you can't have that or you can have that. And, we're going to let you know what you can have and what you can't have on the internet.
Rick Johnson has another question from you in the chat. He says SOA equals start of authority means that ICANN delegates a registrar as a holder of a Web2 domain. I own a domain. I want to use the blockchain to resolve an IP address. How do I do that?
So with a Web3 domain, for instance, if you were to register that domain on Decentralweb, we have a DNS GUI, much like you'd have the same type of GUI in your GoDaddy control panel. So, you can load it up. It gives you the ability to set all the different record types. You could set, A names, C names, MX records, point them to IP addresses, and then you can do wallet address resolution as well and point to different wallets. So it's very similar to Web2.
TC said something, sorry. He said, I once hosted a website off a USB key plugged into a Pogo plug.
That's nerd talk over my head, but it looks like Adam got it.
Oh.
You mentioned open DNS, right? I'm just curious, when it comes to decentralizing stuff like this, where is the line drawn for censorship when it comes to bad actors game theorying, using derogatory terms, racial remarks, and things just are triggering in a way that's so visceral? We should not allow that, but in a world where we want more, like Elon Musk says, freedom of speech comes with hearing people that you don't like say things you don't like. But where do we draw that line, and how is it drawn in something that's quote unquote decentralized and open?
Sure, that's actually an excellent question. So obviously, blockchain is immutable. Anyone can technically interface with a smart contract directly on the blockchain. So if someone wants to push out, something racist or something negative or something like that, and they directly cannot connect to the blockchain or to our smart contract, there's really nothing you can do about that. What you can do is that we have a pool of DNS servers, right? And these DNS servers are becoming more and more decentralized and community based. So you can start to get to you can start to have the idea where there could be consensus among these DNS servers of what's considered acceptable and what's not considered acceptable. So say there's very racist websites, very illegal stuff going on. the DNS servers can decide whether or not they want to propagate and push these results out to clients that connect to it. But again, this goes back to the whole thing of like, do you trust the nodes and the data that they're providing you, or do you want to run your own node and have uncensored data? So it kind of goes back to that, like, you can always trust a third-party node, and then the third-party node could potentially be censoring data for you. Or if you wanted to, you can set up your own node and not have anything censored at all and get the data directly from the blockchain.
It sounds like we don't need policing if we self-regulate. That's what I'm hearing.
Right.
If we choose to not interact with those things will eventually die off and become extinct concepts in culture. That's what I think, especially when it comes to like gamified monetization and incentivized engagement. There isn't much for that there, and eventually it will suffocate itself into existence. Like it won't be there anymore. That evil concept will just away. Rick said that he meant for Web2 domains to point to the blockchain. Sorry, Rick, we misunderstood the question there.
So DecentraWeb doesn't support importing of Web2 domains on the blockchain. However, I know there are some Web2 providers that are starting to tokenize Web2 domains and allowing you to, like as an NFT, and allowing you to put the records on chain. I don't recall. There's one. I think Namecheap may have actually started to do something like this with certain domain names, but DecentraWeb doesn't technically support Web2 names, right? We support Web3 names, and then you have the same type of functionality that you'd have with a Web2 name as on a Web3 name.
I was just seeing if Miggy had a question. Tried to pause.
Sorry, yeah. There. Oh no, I did. Sorry, I was just trying to check the chats and seeing if anything was coming up. So on the technical side, like, what are, I guess, some of the challenges that you face or that you're facing as far as like, like for example, Solana right now, they've had a congestion for like about a week, and I don't know if you have anything like that necessarily you have to deal with, or issues that might hinder the domain names or hinder using them at all because of technical stuff like that.
Yeah, how was it getting on Google Play?
Right.
So we get questions like this all the time. A lot more when we first created this product of why did you select Ethereum and why aren't you on AVAX or BSC or chain XYZ or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the reason why we're on Ethereum is because it's the most stable and the most secure layer 1 smart contract enabled blockchain that's around. And when you're dealing with something as critical as DNS, which is a core part of internet infrastructure, you can't be on like Solana where all of a sudden DNS goes down for 8 hours or 18 hours or a day at a time. Because all of a sudden, how are you going to get to, you're not going to be able to do on-chain DNS lookups. You can have cached lookups, I guess, or do something on that order. But, something as critical as DNS, we need to make sure that it's always running and it's not going down. So right now, all core DNS records are on Ethereum. We opened up the ability to have wallet address resolutions on Polygon. And we're actually in the process of porting over wallet address functionality to other EVM compatible chains. We feel that that's something that we can probably move over to other chains, but we're still hesitant to move core DNS functionality off of Ethereum for this reason.
Rick says, so plugins. So a plugin is required to use the Web3 domain. Does Brave browser support DecentraWeb domains?
So there's currently a couple of different ways you can access a DecentraWeb domain. We have a plugin an extension, a Chrome extension that we've created that's coming out very, very soon that allows you to interface with any DecentraWeb domain. You can manually go in and change your resolver within Brave or Chrome or whatever browser settings that you're using, and do DNS over SSL is an option in there, and you can plug in DecentraWeb's DNS servers there. Or there was a third one I was gonna talk about. Is that one? Oh, okay. And the other thing that we're doing is we're starting to work with and talk with DNS providers to get native support. And the way that they'd be able to do this would be, to run like the Google DNS server that we're talking about that supports Web 2 and Web 3. And actually another option that we have as well is we have built a Web 2 to Web 3 bridge. So the Web 2 to Web 3 bridge doesn't require any changes at all. It's very similar to like, we have like eth.limo, right? Or I think there's also another extension that works with .eth domains. So essentially what it does is we have what's called dwebs.2. So if you were to set up a domain and point it to an IP address, it can even be an IPFS hash. So we support like decentralized storage and stuff like that. And then if you plugged it into a regular browser that didn't have any of these extensions in, and you went to like kennbosak.brobro.dwebs.2, it would automatically redirect you to the Web3 version. So it's kind of like almost like an Ep.limo type of functionality for all DecentraWeb domains, and that's set up by default. So if you ever set anything up on DecentraWeb, it will automatically work with this Web2 to Web3 forwarding system. The first time that you actually go to the website, it's going to take a second because it auto generates the first SSL certificate on the fly, so you can have SSL access to it and everything's encrypted. But it kind of functions like Ep.limo. But our main goal and our end goal is to have integrate DNS functionality from like an ISP level, so that nothing needs to change in your browser. You don't need to install any extensions. It just works, and like you can give your grandmother, or your mother, a Web3 domain address, and she can definitely access it.
Dude, I'm curious what your vision is for application. Like, how would this apply to like the metaverse or like Web3? Websites, stuff like that. How people are going to be interacting with this like virtual space. Obviously, we're going to need another form of communication. We had like this two-dimensional chat environment for like AOL and Web 2, but when it comes to Web 3 and like the metaverse, how do you see this being like incorporated?
Sure. So that's one thing that I definitely feel that and this is why we created DecentraWeb, is that blockchain didn't really have a good namespace or naming conventions. Everything with blockchain and crypto is, no pun intended, it's very cryptic. Having 0x addresses and these long strings, and it almost reminds me of the first iteration of the internet where DNS wasn't really like around, and you had to like go to IP addresses and remember IP addresses. And it's like every single type of system that exists, it starts out with like some sort of like numeric system, and then they apply some sort of like DNS or naming convention to it, right? Like even if you think about like phone numbers, when phone numbers first came out, like it was all just regular digits, and then they started applying letters to the actual numbers. So like it was like ABC for 1, DEF for 2, so on and so forth. And then people used to be like, oh, you can call me. And this was super popular. I remember when I was a kid, they'd be like 1-800-ABC-to-EFG, hooked on phonics, and they had like these commercials. And that was essentially, a domain naming type of system where they figured out that, okay, it's too difficult to know like these these numerals and these numbering systems. So we need to have something that is like a mnemonic device for humans to be able to easily understand, to be able to access these things without having to remember crazy types of numbers. And that's the same thing that came out with DNS. They're like, instead of remembering 32.7.162.5, you go to youtube.com now, and that's a lot easier to remember than an octet of
I never looked at it like like a version of
YouTube.com.
T9, but it kind of sounds like T9 texting, like shorthand. Like, that's crazy. I never saw it that way.
So and to answer your question, I feel like with blockchain and this technology, it's we're in like the beginning innings of it, where we haven't really adopted or taken in like a naming system, and it's needed, especially if you want to have normies and noobs and your parents and people who don't understand this from a technological standpoint. It needs to be easy to understand. Telling your dad to send funds to you, but instead of sending it to 0x12345, send it with some crazy long string, you can send it to kennbosak.brobro or something like that, or adams.wallet or something like that. That's a lot easier for them to comprehend and for them to understand, and it also eliminates the potential for errors to occur, whether it's just manual errors or whatever that have you. So that's a huge thing moving forward in this industry, is to make it things as easy as possible to use. And we've even gone as far as integrating with MetaMask now. So and in the gaming space, we think that blockchain gaming is huge. It's gonna usher in the next billion plus users into the space. And users having a wallet address, a convoluted, confusing wallet address, is not only confusing to developers and studio heads and these these massive studios that are used to traditional gaming and never dealt with blockchain, but it's also necessary for Web 2 users to bring them into Web 3 who are who have never had a wallet address, and they don't understand that. So if you can give someone the wallet ken.callofduty or miggy.callofduty as opposed to some crazy long string, that's a lot easier for them to understand. It's a lot cleaner in a UI to display that on your Call of Duty screen in the top right corner, as opposed to this crazy.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine running around the metaverse with your username being your public address.
Exactly.
Right.
So these types of things need to work with like a naming convention and a naming system. That's what we're here to offer. And we have full integration actually with MetaMask's Unity SDK. That was the first step. So Unity developers now, when they're creating games that are blockchain that have blockchain functionality, they can actually utilize DecentraWeb's naming structure and naming convention.
Crypto Short says modular multi-chain protocols that run side by side with each other for special specific tasks, while all the multi-chains take to each other inside the same protocol.
Yeah, I guess
And
what are
then,
your thoughts on like modular chains versus the single layer chains and like their different use cases, I guess.
So in my opinion, it all comes down to the blockchain trilemma, right? Like, are you interested in decentralization? Are you interested in security? Are you interested in speed? And depending upon what pillar you're interested in, that should dictate the solution that you look for, the solution that you implement. I think a huge component moving forward in terms of like inter blockchain connectivity is actually going to be Chainlink CCIP. I don't know if you're very familiar with that, but essentially it allows messaging to go across different blockchains and blockchain protocols and allow messages and even value to transfer
Oh,
across
sweet.
these blockchains.
Interoperability.
Interoperability between private chains, between public chains. And then, what's also great about this is it doesn't require these institutions that, for instance, aren't interested in adopting a public blockchain or something like that, and they want to use their existing infrastructure or a private blockchain, they can still talk to these other public blockchains. So I think some sort of solution with CCIP, talking to all these chains is definitely in the future. And I'm still of the opinion that Ethereum is going to be in terms of like a layer one smart contract enabled chain is going to be the mother of all chains due to the security and the decentralization that it has. And you're going to have all these other chains operate as layer twos and essentially doing rollups to Ethereum. So then you inherit the security of Ethereum, but then you can still get, if you want the speed and the cheapness of another chain that maybe is a little more centralized, you can utilize that, get cheaper transaction fees, but still inherit Ethereum security via a rollup or something like that.
Dope. I wanted to jump into a little bit about like that viable product. I mentioned earlier
Sure.
Google Play, and you have, I guess, would you call it like a proof of concept, or is it like its own standalone use case for the tech? But you have like a Signal competitor, basically.
Sure. Yeah. No. So, I mean, we definitely want to showcase the capabilities that DecentraWeb has to offer. And one of the things that has always irked me, I guess, in the space are the chat applications that we use, as a Web3 community. So generally in Web3, we gravitate towards Telegram, we gravitate towards Discord. Privately, maybe we use Signal. And the problem with all these applications is that you provide a phone number, you provide identifying information, you provide something that, especially in the Web3 world, you never want to provide to anyone because you should be concerned about SIM swaps. You should be concerned about,
OPSEC, yeah.
Different types of phishing attacks. Like OPSEC is very, very important in this industry. So, one of the things that always killed me with Telegram, and I don't even know why this is still the default, is with Telegram, you give them your phone number and they make your phone number publicly visible to everyone unless you manually go into the privacy settings and turn that off. Like, that's the
Right.
stupidest thing I've ever fucking heard in my life. Like, why are you displaying your phone number publicly to everyone, all these scammers and all these hackers? Like, it's mind-boggling to me. And then the same with Discord. While Discord doesn't, publicly display your phone number, you still have to give them a phone number, and they authenticate it. And the same with Signal. Signal, touts itself as a privacy app. Yet you have to share your phone number with people that you want to talk to on Signal. And the same with WhatsApp. You have to give them your phone number. And in this industry, that's terrible. So the great thing about Signal is that Signal's open source. So actually what we've been doing for the past 6 months is that we've forked Signal and we've stripped out all the phone number functionality out of Signal and replaced it with blockchain login functionality, right? So now instead of having your phone number as your chat handle and your chat identifier, you can have your 0x wallet address or your ens.eth address or any DecentraWeb domain can now be your chat identifier. And now you can chat with other blockchain wallets. And this is available for iOS. It's available for Android. It's on the Play Store. It's on test flight right now on iOS. We're going to be releasing it to the official iOS App Store here shortly. And it's available for Windows, Mac, Linux, desktop, and all devices sync together. And we've reskinned it, we've redesigned it. If you're familiar with Signal, you'll really like this because it has definitely has a Signal feel to it. And we're making this kind of like a native Web3 chat app that utilizes your Web3 identity, and that all goes back to what I was talking about initially about like how Web3 DNS isn't just traditional DNS. It's moving forward with like a Web3 identification layer, and and securing it that layer via your private key in your wallet. So we're adding a lot of functionality into this chat app that doesn't exist in Signal that we feel is very Web3 centric and specific. For instance, we are enabling the ability for people to create group chats within it. It's Decentra Chat is the name of the app. It's decentra.chat. If anyone wants to check it out, DChat for short.
Yeah, it's on the App Store. So if you have an Android device, get it and jump
on
it.
Yeah,
That's
you can
cool.
search for it. And it works with any wallet. It works with all the domains on DecentraWeb. It works with emoji domains. So like we literally have people on there, and their identifier is like like the winky face or something like that. And the cool thing about having a Web3 identity is that you can choose whether you want to be known. You can have like Kenn.Bosak, right? And that's like your known like address. You can be pseudo-anonymous and have, some like, or an anonymous handle and have, just like an emoji. Or you can even have, like a business handle, that's your business, domain name. And it gives you all three abilities to do this and to chat via other, blockchain wallet addresses and domain names, across all those different protocols, and do it in a decentralized and end-to-end encrypted manner. So we thought that was key. And another thing that that we're enabling here, that we feel is critical, that's lacking definitely in like the Telegram and Discord space, is what integrated Web3 functionality. So I run a couple of different crypto projects. I have Decentra, I have Chain Games, and we are constantly plagued with spammers, scammers in our channels, in our chat rooms that are impersonating you, are messaging users, and they somehow get them to divulge their seed words or their private keys. And it's a fucking nightmare just dealing with this on like a daily basis. Like it's nonstop, and obviously it's profitable for them.
I was gonna say it's cost effective
because they continue to do it, and there's no, and Telegram and these other platforms don't really do anything about it. There's nothing to that's in place to stop them. So one thing that we're enabling here on Decentra Chat is the ability to token gate and domain gate chat rooms, right? So say you have, like for instance, we have the Decentra Chat in the Decentra Web chat room. We can specifically put in restrictions on there so that a user cannot join the chat room unless they're holding a specific amount of Decentra Web tokens, or they're holding a domain name that's on Decentra Web's platform, which are NFTs. All of our domain names are NFTs. So we can put in specific type of logic. And you can even have, multiple logic included in, nested, and or you need to hold a Decentra Web, you need to hold 1,000 Decentra Web tokens, and you need to have a
so
domain.
like if the Bored Ape Yacht Club wanted to have their own chat, you'd have to hold like a Bored Ape Yacht plus the Decentra Web to get into their club, as an example.
Yeah. Or maybe not even Decentra. Maybe you're just holding like a Bored Ape NFT, right? And then you're holding like 1,000 ape coins or something like that. And then and then basically when the wallet goes to join a chat, it scans the wallet, and it's like, hey, you don't have this, so you can't join this chat. And even if you were to make it like you have to have $5 or $10 of this token to be in this chat, legitimate community members are already going to have it. They're going to be in the chat. Spammers and scammers, it's not cost effective for them to, they operate on, high volume and probabilities, right? It's not effective for them to buy $5 or $10 of this token, join this chat, and immediately get banned, and that wallet address gets banned, and then all of a sudden,
you can blacklist the wallet, so they can't just make a new domain.
Yeah. You can do also like so. There's definitely customization and functionality in here where it's not cost effective. It's cost prohibitive for scammers and spammers to be able to do this. And it's almost like the discussion that, a lot of people have pitched towards Elon Musk, like in the past. They're like, why don't you make it, where, you need to have like, it costs like $5 to create a Twitter account or something like that. Or, or you can restrict who likes your stuff based upon, like if they're like an authorized check mark or something like that. There's a lot of different things that you can do that are, monetarily based that prohibits these types of attacks from occurring. And it's almost like the same thing with spammers, right? So spammers, that the whole proposition with people mass emailing is that you can send out hundreds of millions of emails and it doesn't really cost you anything. You just need like a dedicated server, you need a domain, you need an internet connection, you can fucking blast it out to wherever. Now, a lot of those are probably going to get caught by spam filters, right? And they're going to get in a spam folder, but some of them are going to get through. And that's like the hope of these spams is they're like, if 0.00001% of these people click on this link, and I'm able to scam them, then it's worth my while. And what's interesting is that, I don't know if you guys know, this is actually how proof of work was like conceptualized. You know who Adam Back is, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Adam
he's the
Back.
OG OG. He actually used to follow me on Twitter, and then he stopped when I went all shitcoinery.
So yeah, he's definitely not
Yeah, he's a
he doesn't
maxi
deviate
for
outside.
sure.
Oh yeah, he doesn't deviate outside of Bitcoin. But I don't know if you know this. Adam Back created what was called hash cash, and hash cash was essentially think about it as like putting a stamp on an email that you'd send out. So basically, and this is where proof of work was like grabbed from by Satoshi. So basically, in order to send an email message, right, your computer would do proof of work and figure out a computational math problem. And then once it figured out the math solution, right, it would apply that to the header of the email address, and then the email would go out. And then they had email servers that had these plugins that would scan for it and be like, oh, like we're verifying that you're running hash cache, right? Because if you're not, you could potentially be spam. And it was the same type of thing, like, you're using computational resources to generate this hash and apply it to your email header, and it wasn't cost effective for spammers to do this. And this is actually how Satoshi designed and came up with proof of work for blockchain. It's based upon Hashcat, and he even references this in the white paper.
Yeah, Adam's name's in the
So we
white
got.
paper.
Oh,
that?
sorry. I was say there's some comments from the Telegram from Crypto Shorts. He was saying that you could use Telegram's private internet numbers to create a private chat. No telecommunication provider needed with the Telegram private numbers. Use them to be connected to a Telegram Web3 domain wallet, all to remain anon. And you could use Telegram to gate your own chats. They do it with the Wax groups, which I've seen a few of them that are like that, but I didn't know they were
Yeah, but
how
that requires like external bots and external configurations, and then you're placing your trust in this is all about trust and verification.
And Telegram could just say, hey, we don't like all the stuff you're doing, and get rid of your chat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, these chats are fully end-to-end encrypted. We have no clue what's going on in them. We have no clue what's going on in any of your messages. This actually uses the Signal library and the Signal algorithms to encrypt all this stuff. So Telegram isn't encrypted. The only time that Telegram is encrypted is if you do a secret chat with someone. And they claim it's end-to-end encrypted. I don't really know if it is end-to-end encrypted.
Let me ask you a question.
Who knows if they have the keys for that?
How would you go about sharing a private key with somebody around the world to set up a multi-sig? Is there like a chat that you would trust? Or is Decentra chat the only one you would trust since you're behind it? But
why are you sharing a private key if you're doing a multi-sig, why are you sharing a private key in the first place? What you should be doing is you should have a multi-sig with multiple wallets, and then each person controls their own private key, and it's controlled that way.
Right. Well, I mean, just saying, like, what if you wanted to share your private key with like a loved one or something, right? Like as a backup in case this plane doesn't make it type situation. I'm just saying, like, for any reason, like, how would you like sending it to your lawyer instead of writing it down? Like you're in the middle of something that, like, battlefield in Iraq, you don't know what's about to happen. How would you communicate your private keys securely over the internet to somebody else that can safely get it?
Right.
I would say my first option would be to not put it on the internet.
Okay.
That would be if that's
carrier pigeon first.
I would do it on paper or split it amongst like say it's like seed words, like 24 seed words or something like that.
Well, that's how I feel. Like, is anything encrypted enough that you feel that safe? Because that's how safe I want to feel when something's encrypted.
If I was going to do something like that, truthfully, this is what I would do. I would drive to Walmart. I would buy a laptop from Walmart, like just a generic laptop. I would boot up with a live Linux CD, and then I would encrypt my private key using something like Veracrypt, like an open source, well-audited, well-known encryption library. And then I would send that encrypted file to someone.
Okay.
And then I tell them to do the same thing. I'd say, get a brand new laptop, log in with live Linux, get this program,
and probably on like a
decrypt
totally
it.
separate device, send them the key to decrypt it. So you need 4 of these laptops all together.
Yeah, I mean that would probably be like the most secure way to do it.
I got a really good question in the chat. Shout out to BWO, bro. Like, I have to figure out ways to give away stuff. Like, shout out. Like, what if Kenn sold his domain to a bad actor, and now everyone thinks the bad actor is him?
So in Decentra chat, for instance, we use what's called security numbers, right? So when you are chatting with anyone on Decentra chat, you're exchanging a key essentially with that other person. If someone else was to get your, like say your domain name expired, right? You didn't renew it in time, and someone else, got that domain name, and then they sign into DecentreChat. First of all, the chats and the chat history and the contacts and everything is stored encrypted locally on your end device, right? So they wouldn't have any of that information. So they don't know.
So they
who you're
wouldn't be able
talking
to read
They
your
don't-
press conversations and have anything to
No,
like
they can't.
relate to in
They-
convo.
No. What
Okay.
they could potentially do is that they could say, hey, I know Ken talks to Adam. I know Adam is adam.dweb on DecentreChat. I'm going to shoot Adam a new message as Kenn Bosak.Robro to adam.dweb and see if he responds. So what happens in DecentreChat, though, is that we recognize that your key has changed because it's a new end user device. And
Oh,
there's
it's
a
a
warning
new
that comes
wallet,
up.
new wallet, new me.
New wallet, new device, and a warning comes up and it will say, hey, your safety number has changed with Kenn Bosak.Robro. Verify that you're talking to who you actually think you're talking to. And you can it even says view more, and that gives you like an entire long explanation of like how you ensure this isn't a man in the middle attack, ensure this is who you think you're talking to. It actually warns you of these types of things.
That's sick. That's forward thinking as fuck, honestly. Because I thought that was a great question. Because game theorying, bad acting, that's sort of the tinfoil hat I like to keep on, because those people are going to be the first there. I mean, that's just always what it comes down to. I'm sure the first time men discovered fire, we used it for something malicious, and then we were like, hey, we could use this to stay warm and cook food after we just burnt an entire like forest down for funsies.
Village down.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And it's interesting that you talk about like bad actors, and that's one of the things we actually have to think about as well, as we start to decentralize our DNS infrastructure more and more. Because one of the things, like again, if you're not utilizing your own node and pulling the data yourself from, it's always don't trust, verify, right? But if you can't verify and you're trusting, right, you're on the other side of that equation. There needs to be protocols in place to ensure that bad actors are punished or can't exist in your system. So, when you have something like a DNS infrastructure, decentralized DNS infrastructure, and you're relying on external DNS nodes to provide you with this data, you need to ensure that they're trustworthy too, right? Like what happens if you send out a DNS request to the DNS network and there's a bad actor on there, and instead of giving you the proper IP address for Uniswap, they give you a malicious IP address with some home server they set up because they want to, jack your funds and drain your wallet. So, we're putting protections into place where there's going to be consensus amongst the DNS providers and nodes to ensure that there aren't bad actors. So, for instance, say you send out a request, for .uniswap. So Uniswap gets that domain, and you want to go to app.uniswap is the new Web3 interface for Uniswap. That request goes out to the DNS nodes. The DNS nodes would then do a consensus among all nodes to verify that there's not a bad actor replying back with a bad IP address. And if there is a bad actor that's replying back with a bad IP address, we can enable some sort of penalty like slashing or something like that. So in order to be a DNS server to begin with and be part of like the public node infrastructure, you're going to have to stake a certain amount of DecentraWeb tokens, DWeb tokens. So say I don't know what that number is going to be, but say it's 1 million tokens you need to stake or 100,000 tokens or something like that. If you reply back with a malicious IP address, or you're a bad actor, we can say, okay, you know what, we're slashing, the protocol's slashing 10% of your DecentraWeb stake or 25% of your DecentraWeb stake, and then it's redistributing that into like the staking pool for the community.
You're gonna get fined. I like that.
So before we get to the wrap up here, why don't you? I have one question. Why don't you let us know like what you think or what you believe really kind of sets y'all apart from other similar services? You have like places like Unstoppable Domains that are doing something pretty similar. You also got Join Fio, who they're coming in with their naming service that acts as a wallet, and they're going multi-chain as well. So what would you say that distinguishes what you have going on from others?
Sure.
That are doing similar.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of view us as ENS on steroids, right? So let's talk.
That's
let's
not
talk
something most people want to be known for, unless you're Conor McGregor.
Let's kind of like dissect all these services. So you have ENS, right? And that means you can get your .eth domain. But that's all you can get. You get a .eth domain, and there's some issues with that. One is that if you want to have you want to be able to be brandable. You don't want to have your name .eth. You want to have just your name. Like
That's
I want to have
point.
Adam.Barlam, or you want to have like Miggy.crypto or something like that.
Yeah, imagine if your
.Mickey.
DecentraWeb shirt just said Fruit of the Loom biggest shit on the sleeve.
Yeah, or decentralweb.eth or something like that, you know. So, you know, that's the main differentiation between us and like ENS is that, yeah, you can have a full top level domain. You can have subdomains off of those top level domains. And we offer, we can basically, with Decentralweb, you can become your own ENS or your own
That's a good point.
unstoppable
Dude, you can do
or
your own
own.
airdrop for subdomains. That is genius.
Not only that, so we offer the ability to what we call stake domains. So you can actually,
Oh, shit, I'm
you
gonna
know,
do
you
that.
can stake a domain within our platform. So
That's cool.
say you bought the domain, you know, I don't know, blockchain services, dot blockchain services, and you're like, you know, I want to allow people in the blockchain industry the ability to register a subdomain off of my top level domain dot blockchain services. Well, you can stake a domain with us, and we have a little, you know, like a GUI for this, where it's like, okay, I want to stake this domain. I want to charge people $10 or $20 for them to register a subdomain off of my blockchain services. So, you know, maybe one of them is like, you know, compute.blockchain services, or, you know, financial help.blockchain services, or wallet help, or, you know, whatever. You can set up, you can basically have it set up permissionlessly where anyone can go in and they can register a subdomain against your top level domain and you get paid for it. So it's you essentially become like a decentralized GoDaddy or a decentralized version of Unstoppable or ENS, where you know, you can stake your domains and then earn money off of it. So if you find like, you know, really good top level domains that are like keywords or a city name, like say you got .phoenix, right, and you own .phoenix, well, all of a sudden, you know, maybe these restaurants or businesses now want, you know, business name .phoenix so that they can have that you know, that domain name associated
On
with
the
their
same
business or
note, do
with
you
their.
see smart contracts utilizing this instead of, you know, putting in public addresses? They could put it in the short handle domains, or do you think that that's too soon?
I think that's coming in the future. I think, you know, this entire naming space is going to start propagating throughout blockchain, just like it did on every other existing network, from phone systems to, you know, Web 1 and Web 2. You know, it's coming for Web 3. It's just a matter of adoption and integration. You know, and to go back to what I was saying about, you know, like the difference between, you know, all these different services, is that, you know, Decentralweb allows you to become your own Unstoppable, your own you know, your own ENS, your own decentralized
Yeah.
GoDaddy by staking these domains, and everything's handled passively by the smart contract. It's like set it and forget it. It even gives you like a URL, and you can become your own registrar page. So, you know, you could stake a bunch of domains that you think can be profitable. People can come in, they can register domains off of those. They're all NFTs. It's all minted instantly into the user's wallet. It's all compatible with OpenSea and everything, you know, all these other NFT platforms, and essentially become, you know, like an entire business like that. Like, you know, domain selling is a big business on Web 2. And you know, we want to extend that to Web 3. So that's one difference with
How are the fees? How are
Decentralweb.
the fees, real quick, before you go into the other examples? How are the fees split up when you mentioned like the $10 example?
Sure. So the way it works right now is that if it's say you set it for $10, 70% goes to you, 20% goes to the staking pool, and 10% goes to the dev wallet and the DAO wallet to improve functionality of the Decentralweb network. So that's the current setup that we have for stake domains. And there you can even do what's called a privately staked domain. So this is kind of cool for like communities, right? And this is something that you can't do, you know, with these other platforms either. So say you own you know, like Bored Ape, right? And you're like, I want everyone in the Bored Ape community to be able to register their own subdomain Bored Ape. Like I want Miggy.Bored Ape or Ken.Bored Ape or whatever.
Exactly.
But again, just like the
Yep.
CentraChat, you can restrict from the smart contract level who can actually register one of those domains. You're like, I don't want everyone, you know, anyone and everyone being able to register a Bored Ape. I only want to make sure it's my community members that are doing it. So you need to either hold a Bored Ape NFT, or you need to hold, you know, 1 8 point or 10 8 points or whatever the case may be. Or maybe you have to hold both of those, you know, and then you have permission, you know, to register that subdomain off of it. So, you know, we offer this like really like conditional logic type of functionality and cool functionality that we think is like really beneficial to these groups and to these Web3
like that.
projects. And then another thing I just want to mention is that Unstoppable is very, very centralized. In the Web3
A little bit.
we're not very fond of Unstoppable. And you know, one case of this is that, I mean, there's multiple cases, but Unstoppable controls all the root contracts of all those domains that they own, right? So they own like what .wallet and like .crypto and like, you know, .polygon, I think they have now, and they have like, I think they have about 11 domains, top level domains, where they allow you to get the sub-level domain. And then they charge you, I think, based even upon like certain letters. So if it's like less letters, it's more money and stuff like that. But the issue is that they can rescind your domain at any point in time because they control the root smart contract. Decentralweb's 100% decentralized and immutable. Like once you mint a domain, like we can't control it. It's your NFTs in your wallet. Like it's gone. It's done. We don't have any control over it. Unstoppable actually had the top level domain .coin, right? And this happened like maybe like 2 years ago, where there was another project from like 2014, and they're like, hey, we have .coin too. Why are you guys like stepping on our .coin domains? And it was like this whole big issue, and Unstoppable actually decided to rescind everyone's .coin domain, right? So they're like you went on Unstoppable, you paid, I don't know, $30, 40, whatever the cost was for a .coin domain. And then they're like, well, sorry guys, you can't have that domain anymore. We're taking it back. And they just gave them like credit in their system. They're like, go buy another domain on Unstoppable. This one's not yours anymore. So really, like, it's stoppable domains. It's not unstoppable.
That sounds
domains.
like Elon Musk with @X. That poor guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like they're just like, that's ours now. So like, like the centralized, it's decentralization theory, is what that term that you love, Ken, that I like to call it.
Yeah, it is a good term because it is at this point in time mostly theory. It's much like unicorns and fairy tales, and yeah, I'd like to see us get closer and closer there, especially at the fundamental layer, because if the foundation isn't decentralized, everything built on top of it is a house of cards made out of porcelain.
Yep, exactly. And you're going to have, as you get more and more up, towards the top of the pyramid, you're going to have things that are going to be more centralized. But, if you can have that decentralization layer at the very bottom, at the base layer, and then build on top of that, obviously, as you get more up, things are going to become more decentralized. But if you can get that base protocol layer to the point where it's sufficiently decentralized, I think that's that's the goal, and that's where we're trying to head.
All right, guys, you heard it. Adam, thank you so much. Check out decentralweb.org and pick up your decentralized DNS, guys. I want to see you in .brobros. And I know Miggy's going to end up getting his own. We're going to have to compete for community attention and stuff. But
no, I'm gonna buy. I need to buy Kenn Bosak.
That's so much fun, isn't it?
You're too late. He already owns Kenn Bosak.
Thank you.
No, I think I own .Bosak, not Kenn Bosak. That's what I mean. There's so many.
Right.
There's so much fun to be had with this, and I love that. I love that your brain went right there. Everybody in the chat, thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate all your questions, feedback, comments. It was greatly appreciated. I see we have a couple hundred viewers on multiple platforms, probably at about 1,000 live viewers altogether. So thank you all for tuning in. We'll be here Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern till 11 p.m. Shout out to the Asvoria gang, asvoria.io. Check out Web3, spatial web right there. And as always, have a night.
See y'all later.
Later, bros.